Fear is born of the devil. It has no beginning, no end. It is eternal, omnipotent. Fear is at your side as you listen to a half-heard sound. It is here, a finger touch away. It is always behind you, especially when you are alone.
For tens of billions of humans, life in the 41st millennium is nothing but pain, slavery, and ignorance. A life of unceasing misery broken only by the grave. Brilliance crushed by the weight of dogma and intellectual repression. From the wealthy and privileged to the lowliest slaves, there is room for dissent and discontent in the race of man. Revolution and reform are unknown words in the calcified bureaucracy of the Imperium. The indomitable armies that protect humanity from external threats also crush any native attempt at change. So where can someone channel their disgust with the system? Straight into the demonic arms of the chaos cults. The ruinous powers are by far the most dangerous threat to humankind. Lurking below and beyond human sanity in the twisting realm of the Imperium lay the Chaos Gods, foul beings of unstoppable might born of the evil thoughts of mortals. Though divergent in practice, all of the Chaos Gods harbor a single dream, to take dominion of real space and merge it into the twisted realm of the warp. Chaos has launched innumerable raids against the Imperium, and 13 as yet unsuccessful Black Crusades. But don't mistake the lulls between these overt attacks as peace. In between the wars, Chaos is seeding countless human worlds, with the vastly more dangerous, insidious threat of cults. Human curiosity, going back to the legend of Pandora, is one of the most dangerous weaknesses affecting the Imperium. The bright, educated scholars trained in lore both arcane and mundane are vital to the running of the Imperium. These savants are allowed to delve deeply into the knowledge governing the giant technomantic superstructure of mankind. Yet intelligence, drive, and passion for comprehension are needed and reviled in equal measure. The Imperium of man has calcified to a point where hundreds or thousands of years pass with no change or innovation whatsoever. Human beings are instinctively driven to create, to shape, and remake the world around them in new ways. The iron hand of the Inquisition and the High Lords of Terra sitting apathetic on a distant planet can breed resentment. Resentment can turn to hatred when the vast organs of state power refuse to allow scientific progress that will save you or your world from needless suffering. Intellectual freedom is brutally suppressed. You cannot research what you want, say what you want, think what you want without the eyes of the state watching for any sign of heresy. Human wisdom is forever broken on the wheel of ignorance. These overripe minds yearning to bear fruit make a perfect bed for the growth of chaos. Tzeentch, the Lord of Change, has recruited millions to his secret societies dedicated to esoteric lore. They work sub rosa inside houses of learning, pilfering forbidden knowledge. Initially, the wisdom gleaned seems harmless and highly advantageous to their careers, but gradually they learn the secrets of chaos magic, dark ritual, and infernal invocations. The unholy books begin to tear away at their sanity, until the urge to slay and rule is unstoppable. Under the holy mandates of the Inquisition, they must override their deepest needs and desires to seek, to know, to understand. So harmless a thing as learning is ruthlessly crushed. Their world, their dreams, their belief in the Imperium are shattered. Nothing seems to mean anything anymore. The chains of the mind, the erasure of dreams, hope, and learning produce a kind of madness and desperation. Tzeentch and his heretical sorcerers provide the outlet for seekers of wisdom outside of prescribed norms, such as the nihilistic insanity that can drive a man to the arms of the Chaos Gods. What terrible thoughts and feelings can drive normal men and women into the worship of hell? Hope. Hope is the most powerful driving force in all of creation. And if the only thing providing hope is a demon, then you will grab hold even of their clawed hands. The day-to-day lives of the average Imperial citizen vary widely. Many, however, are locked away in a futuristic version of medieval tyranny, grist for the Imperial mills to grind away until all use is gone and death takes them. The hive worlds with their teeming billions of miserable humans feel they can escape their doom only with demon worship. Hive gangs of brutish thugs making a living off of murder and territory are easy to seduce. They grow up totally unsocialized, killing means less than nothing to them. A powerful man promising to increase their ability to destroy would be welcome, in their passion to rule the power structures oppressing them. Some workers or miners are lost in such miserable poverty lasting generations that they worship chaos as a last act before death. They decided to follow the path of hell, intending for the Inquisition to slaughter them all in a form of mass suicide. Such is the horror average citizens of the Imperium go through that calling down their own extermination is preferable to life. And it's not so simple to bring about change in anything, because the tendrils of chaos are always seeking to wrap themselves around any dissonant forces. Planetary revolutions, government overthrows, and coups are notoriously tricky to bring about, even without demonic interference. But lurking in the corner of every insurgent cell, every demonstration, every street barricade, filled with righteous citizens are the eyes of chaos. The Imperium is in a terrible trap of its own making. The price for peace is eternal vigilance, but within the vigilance of the Inquisition is torture, murder, and injustice. Ironically, the ruthless suppression required to keep down the tendrils of chaos is a major reason people join chaos in the first place. Any reform movement of any kind to make things better is considered heresy and abandoned. The hopeless folk who just wanted to make this a little better for themselves are seized by infernal forces. Like a bacterium entering into a weak, undefended cell, demons crawl into even the noblest intentions. The only way to advance in a stratified society may be through leaking the immaterium into your world and staining humanity with its corruption. And the cycle of repression, revolution, and corruption continues unbroken, while chaos gluts itself on human suffering. The intellectual and aristocratic elite running the manufactorums, planets, and trade networks would seem to be at ease with the system as it is. They have, after all, reached the heights of imperial power and respect. Don't be fooled. The hand of chaos can often find even easier purchase among the wealthy and powerful. Ambition is another powerful motive force driving the wealthy and privileged to further dominance and power. Imperial princelings are even more cavalier about seeking any and all means of advancing further in the chain of command. Feuding between or within dynasties of the upper crust is perfect territory for demonic intervention. They are, after all, looking for people with power to abuse the system and infect the structures of authority. The corruption, violence, and cruelty of the regimes may themselves be caused by the taint of devilry. The cycle may be a manufactured system to first create loathing and oppression from above, simultaneously fomenting rebellion from below, and when these two sides meet, create a storm of terror that will bring forth the hordes of the warp. Even the gilded palaces of the all-powerful masters and lords of men can be soaked with the corruption of chaos. Perhaps the most complicated groups to deal with are the variations on the imperial cult. Part of the leeway shown to the millions of worlds and trillions of worshippers of the Emperor is that local differences of belief are allowed to a point. It would be impossible to police everything with absolute precision. Most of these differences are superficial, and merely reflect the specific cultural idiom from which they arose. A pre-Black Powder world is not going to worship the God Emperor the same way as a Hive world, but some are forever teetering on the fall into heresy. Even the sharp eyes of the Inquisitors cannot stop every change in belief, shifting from harmless to lethal. Religion was the motive force behind the vile Word-bearers, the first of the Emperor's champions to be corrupted during the Great Crusade. Blasphemous as it may be to think this, the idea of the imperial cult was itself created by the traitor legion, the Word-bearers. The first ever organized worship of the Emperor was an act of evil from men already poisoned by chaos. The Word-bearers claim the lion's share of the blame for spearheading the corruption of the Space Marine legions to chaos. The Chaos cult is above all a threat from within, and no place, no region of the galaxy, even the most holy veneration of the God Emperor is free from putrid corruption. The point of the cults is to worm their way into the most sacred of areas and strike where we are the most vulnerable. One of the most blatantly dangerous types of chaos cult are the martial brotherhoods and lodges formed by some in the military. Anyone can form them, but Space Marines with their zealous fighting spirit are particularly prone to these sorts of organizations. These Marines become obsessed with the extreme violence of their jobs. The ceaseless wars against mankind's enemies are no longer a solemn duty. They become a wild orgy slaking berserk rages. They revel in bloodshed for its own sake. Suddenly, the most fearsome warriors mankind can produce have been turned against humanity. In some ways, Khorne, the god of blood, claims all acts of rage and violence to be a source of his power. He waits in his dark sanctum on his throne of skulls, drinking in any and all acts of violence and combat. Even trying to stop him would necessitate warfare, something that may give him strength. The loss of reason that comes with battle fury eats away slowly at even the mighty will of a space marine. They don't understand at first that they've been twisted by pride into embracing evil. Warrior cults, whether on primitive feral worlds or among the Adeptus Astartes themselves, combine real-world military training, competence, and discipline with implacable zeal for chaos. They are extremely dangerous, both because you can fall into these beliefs so easily, and because they have the military might to defeat inquisitorial strike forces. Commonly, the sects do not know, at first, that they are worshipping demons. Some cults begin with whispers and reasonable requests. What harm could a little deviation from the norm do? Isn't a mutant just a human with some cosmetic differences? Or couldn't a psyker be the next phase of human evolution? And most pressing of all to the lives of the weak and oppressed masses, why shouldn't we revolt against our vile oppressors? Why shouldn't we water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants? All sins of chaos cults lay ultimately with the sin of pride, the prideful belief that a mere human could know better than the God Emperor himself. Why should anyone deny me the right to study and learn anything I so choose? Betraying the Emperor and his holy will may mean momentary release from misery and suffering, but it will always be replaced with something even worse. The cults always begin with a single person, someone who has tasted the sensual pleasures too freely, or read too many books of forbidden lore, or took a little too much joy in slaughtering his enemies. Perhaps he goes insane or is actually possessed by a demon that controls him from then on, or perhaps he is entirely cynical and treats the cult purely as a means to power. Whatever his motivation, he is then in direct contact with the hellish realms and becomes an enemy of order. For much of his reign, he keeps the exact nature of his overlords a secret. Only he is privileged enough to know the full plan of the cult, know of the existence of other cults, and know how to summon the Dark Ones. The cult leader is almost always extremely charismatic, able to use honeyed words or fire and brimstone fury to cajole, bully, threaten, and beguile his followers into joining him in greater and greater deviance. Soon the weak-willed fools are gulled into obeying him like a master. They consider themselves to be the chosen ones of a new and special group outside of the petty concerns of others. For the broken spirits too often found in the oppressive imperial hierarchy, any way of feeling good about themselves and superior to others is a joyous occasion. Years of misery, self-hatred, tamping down their inner desires and urges, are washed away and replaced with veneration and obeisance to the cult leader and his dark gods. With his inner retinue of sycophants and servants, the newly endued heresiarch continues recruitment tailored to his specific abilities and his Chaos Lord's wishes. A Slanesh worshipper may troll the decadent pleasure dens of the jaded hyper-wealthy elite, passing himself off as a worldly man of leisure, with ideas about slaking the carnal thirsts of the aristocracy. A follower of Tzeentch may be a wizened man late in life who founds a speculative society of fellow researchers at a local academy. They have to keep quiet about their activities, of course, as he promises to let the scholars in on information marked forbidden by those busybodies at the Inquisition. A rough-and-tumble former military man spends his retirement at the taverns, frequented by the local Imperial Guard, telling harrowing stories of battle, buying everyone drinks, and convincing a few of them he knows a special way to make them into more efficient killing machines. Maybe make them unstoppable juggernauts with just a few harmless rites or rituals. A follower of Father Nurgle, Lord of Disease, could masquerade as a kindly nurse. She stays with even the most loathsome and grotesque patients, tending to their horrible sores with not a cross word, and she could tell them about a way to recover from their illness with faith in the right person, a good, kindly grandfather who can help them be free of illness forever. However he gathers servants, the cult grows and grows, penetrating further and further into every subgroup of a planet's administration. The Heresiarch moves his followers an inch at a time, to cross over into outright villainy. Like a boiled frog, the cultists may not realize what they have done until it's too late. They escalate gradually until the cult has committed dark acts of heresy that cannot be forgiven. The cult is the only support structure they have left, and the harshest punishments of torture and death await anyone even suspected of treachery. The only thing left for them is to further embrace the mad rites of the cult. The sect tries hard to be as welcoming and friendly as possible. They have to rely on severe disenchantment or outright hatred of the system to thrive, so they create what seems like a welcoming group of friendly people who understand their struggles and provide a home for them. The cults press hard on the most fragile parts of humans, their emotions, in order to manipulate them. That is, after all, what the warp is, the steaming jungle of the unconscious, created by feeling and desire. The demons and eventually the cultists become experts at twisting the knife into people's feelings and playing on their innermost primal needs. After months or years, the cultist may see the group as his true family and home, the people that actually represent him and love him. They may be beyond the ability to know when the day finally arrives. The day of revelation when all is made plain to the masses, what they are truly worshipping and what their beliefs really mean. Until then, the cult focuses purely on survival and transmission, simply living another day when all of society, including a vast force of fanatical warriors, is dedicated to opposing everything you do. During the cult's existence, they adapt a huge network of secret codes, occult symbols, and ciphers. Like a resistance movement against an enemy army, the cultists work to preserve themselves until the moment to strike, only occasionally committing acts of sabotage, murder, and assassination if they are threatened with discovery. Murdering law enforcement that gets too close and building elaborate support networks of food, weapons, supplies, and plans occupies much of their time. The cult lays all of the groundwork for a successful invasion, carefully plotting out the location of enemy bunkers and weapons caches, learning security codes, ensuring emergency service equipment is old and slow to respond in a crisis, slowly hollowing out the world until it's an empty shell, needing only a little push to break it open. Not all cults reach that level of seriousness. Some are just to pull back a few thousand slaves to slake the thirst for torture for Slaanesh and his decadent hordes. Others are lower-level demons that enjoy twisting mortals into blood sacrifice. Some choose never to reveal themselves. Only when the Inquisition arrives to slaughter the congregants is it apparent what they were worshipping. These minor cults are a deadly threat to those near them, but can't threaten things on a planet-wide basis, and are merely a nuisance overall. But a serious demon cult operates as part of a planned invasion force. They reveal themselves to the masses at the very last moment before the cataclysm. When the cults finally reveal themselves, they conclude, rather than begin, a terrible process. The cults typically spend years or even decades slowly plotting their victory. Millions of migrants from other worlds, the dispossessed, the insane, members of smaller cult groups have secretly been funneled over years onto the planet, concentrating a few isolated bands of cultists from across a sector into one location. Like water dropping ever on a stone, they gradually wear away the resistance of mankind. The cult has likely seeded its followers, many demon-possessed monstrosities, into key parts of a planetary administration. The planetary defense force is almost assuredly riddled with chaos servants, far up the chain of command. The cultists have painstakingly studied the planet's defenses, and crippled them wherever they could. Finally, a terrible explosion of warp energy rises across the entire world, and the carnage begins. The cultists and their followers, often driven totally insane by years of deprivation, disease, famine, and hostile warp energies, rage across the world in bestial fury. Fathers slay their children, cities are burned to the ground, symbols of the Emperor are torn down and replaced with hideous fetishes. Mutants emerge from hiding and wreak terrible vengeance on the normal men and women who persecuted and cursed them for generations. Rogue psychers are unable to contain their urges anymore, their minds invaded and colonized by the gnashing teeth of monsters. If a planetary governor can think quickly enough, he can purge the traitors from his military and retire to a fortified city. The wretched civilian survivors of the purge are drawn to the last few zones of resistance. They huddle there trying to comprehend a world in ruins, family members dead or insane and the very laws of reality rapidly diminishing. Psychers melt their brains trying to send distress calls across the band of chaotic energy, slowly swallowing the planet. Whether any of these Creed occur have reached potential rescuers is unknown. Those trapped outside the fortified zones live a desperate life waiting to be dragged out of hiding and sacrificed to the dark gods. The cities become hellish warrens that the bombed-out, insane remnants wander, hoping to kill or be killed in the name of hell. Millions and millions of cultists have seized most of the planet and its weapons and vehicles. Mad prophets infested with the souls of a demon become dark missionaries spreading visions of doom and inflaming the minds of the survivors. Some perhaps have taken hold of the massive orbital defense network and rained down a ferocious bombardment of hellfire missiles and lasers from space, flattening the cities and killing billions. Eventually enough blood has been shed, enough torturous pain slashes the veil of reality, and the ritual is complete. The warp itself bleeds out into our plane of existence. Out of the warp pour the originators of the mayhem, the traitor Legiones Astartes and their demonic masters. If no help arrives, the Chaos Marines swiftly annihilate the remnants of the planet's defenders and seize total control of the planet. The nature of the demonic regime varies based on who the cultists ultimately worship. Khorne's soldiers will create a savage world of blood feuding and turn entire cities into titanic gladiatorial arenas to slay hundreds of millions for his own vile amusement. Slaaneish's followers will drag their awesome instruments of torture through the void and begin a regime so vile Kamara itself would find it appalling. Nurgle is likely the worst of them all. Father Nurgle, Lord of Disease, will infect the remnants of man with his terrible plagues. Men, women, and children will be riddled with pustules, cancers, and sores to please the hideous life-giver. Whatever the specifics of the cult's beliefs, woe and nightmares will befall any left alive on the planet. The remaining cultists are rounded up and formally enslaved. Demons drive them with whips and blows to build evil shrines and prepare the planet for an Imperial relief force. If a relief force arrives even with both Imperial Guardsmen and Space Marine chapters, they will have a terrible battle on their hands. The traitor legions and their demonic overlords treat their human followers with undisguised contempt. Though much of the success of Chaos was born of mortal worshippers, the forces of Chaos treat them as pathetic lickspittles, barely worth their notice. When war comes, the cultists are driven out onto the battlefield as cannon fodder. The lunatic hordes of warp-twisted mortals charge the enemy with no regard for tactics or common sense. The madmen sweep forward straight into waiting autocannon fire, and nests of chainsword-wielding assault marines. Pathetic human weaklings are perfect to force onto minefields to clear them before battle. The dregs wield captured weapons if they're lucky, or iron bars and knives if they're not. The assault is directed only to soak up enemy bullets, foul their guns, and provide meat shields for the traitor legions following behind. The cultists are willing participants in their own demise, having promised to die for their masters in exchange for supernatural powers in the afterlife. Some cultists are kept around merely to be killed and used on the battlefield as a mobile sacrifice, to bring more demons to bear. A more enterprising force of Chaos may have other more exotic uses for their supplicants. In preparation for the rebellion, the best cultists are led away to subterranean laboratories, staffed by warp sorcerers. Hideous rites mix with forbidden Xenos surgical technology to bring profane transformation unto the mortals. But mortal they are no longer. Through implementation of demonic flesh and ineffable surgeries on most major organs, the men are able to rise from their graves after death. The madmen are convinced they will become invincible to enemy damage, but really they are reborn upon death into bloated warp zombies. According to the Ordo Malleus, this is one of the least disturbing ritual alterations performed on warp cultists. What could be worse is best unknown. The battles are truly nightmarish, as the cultists will fortify themselves deep within subterranean slaughter tunnels, in urban centers emerging by night to kidnap straggler guardsmen and sacrifice them for more power. Servants of Nurgle have been known to be purposefully infected with lethal plagues and teleported directly into Space Marines command centers, infecting everyone within the command staff instantly. The battles rage on with total disregard for life and sanctity, mutilating the planet's surface with profane energies and lakes of blood. For every 100 cultists gunned down, 1,000 more take their place, fearsomely painted with occult tattoos, mutilations and foul warp mutations giving them preternatural strength and endurance. The end of the warp cult depends on the desires of the warp creatures commanding them. If the war is going well, they may demand the teeming millions of worshippers to charge against the Imperium's forces again and again until victory is brought by sheer weight of numbers. Or perhaps everything involved with the cult is a tragic ruse. The point is not victory, but the deaths of nearly every human on the planet. The self-destructive end of the cultists' acts are the final component of a ritual set in place years before, as the eddies and currents of the warp stir into a furious torrent that summons one of the Chaos Gods himself. Should a deity or even just his avatar appear in real space, the psychic backlash would be enormous. Even if the forces of chaos were eventually defeated, the planet would likely be lost forever, totally uninhabitable to human life. But most chaos incursions don't reach that point. When they wreak as much havoc as possible, the demons and traitor marines withdraw and open up one last portal to the Imperium. Into this they drag the remaining hundreds of millions of human cultists, leaving the world a smoking ruin. The cult is finally complete and the individuals are dragged off to their final reward, an eternity of slavery on the timeless chaos planets.
Their final destination is darkness, and waiting for them is despair. They will be swarmed by betrayal, confusion, lamentation, fear. All that will be left is purest dream.
Some of the brighter or more capable supplicants can avoid the shackles of their gods and advance to high positions. Less than 1% of the total will become honored warp sorcerers, chaos lords, or powerful demons themselves, but the rest are cast into perdition, living in unendurable conditions of madness, where the laws of physics no longer apply. Few retain their sanity for long on planets with oceans of blood, fire raining from the sky, plague soaking the streets filled with noxious demons. They serve as the playthings of monstrosities without name, their ultimate end unknown even to the God Emperor himself. Such is the reward of serving chaos. Cults are notoriously hard to stamp out. Like a disease, if a tiny fragment or cell remains, the demons will shift focus and empower the surviving cultists. Within a few years, the group is back on its feet and sowing dissent once again. Threats from the dark realm of emotion and fear are forever lurking in the corners of the Imperium. Never fool yourself into thinking you are safe from men who accept the blandishments of demons. The cults are protean, forever defying definition and classification, the ultimate force of chaos remaining ever one step ahead of the Inquisition's scholars. It can appear anywhere at any time and corrupt anyone. The hidden enemy of mutant and demon is what almost destroyed the Imperium in embryo. During the Horus Heresy, even the glorious Emperor of Mankind did not see the sneak attack launched by the traitor legions. Without him, we would be utterly lost and consumed by the poisonous foes, inimical to all life and reason. But even his light can illuminate only a fraction of darkness enveloping humanity in the void. Lurking, hiding, and waiting all around us among those we consider friends are forces more savage than any orcish barbarian, more disgusting than any tyrannid bioform. Remember the words of Inquisitor Malachi Wernhardt: "The greatest monster of all is man." The demon does not choose to dwell outside the blessed materium, nor does the Xenos cast aside the holy form of man to walk another path. Both are terrible and foul, it is true, but the heretic and the traitor were given every gift in the universe, and chose to cast them aside. There is no greater crime than this. Order, discipline, and unswerving faith are all that keeps humanity from eternal perdition at the hands of demons. And the jaws waiting to engorge us all are your friends, your neighbors, your underlings and overlords, your compatriots and family members. Within the light and peace of the Imperium is a foe darker than anything lurking in the oblivion of unknown space. It's just a matter of time before reason breaks. Order is cast down like Lucifer from heaven, and the reign of madness and suffering begins.
Without so many offerings, I would have remained trapped. And no, I will soon come to claim you all.
Though eternity lies before thee, thy work in the land of the living is not done. Return, brave ones.
And watch more videos.